ring, out of the red corner, a mixed martial artist, holding professional record, 12 wins, 1 loss, Sugar Sean O'Malley!
Okay, TJ Aljamain, been over the rules in the back, you know exactly what I expect. Keep yourself protected, and when I tell you to stop, you stop. If you want to touch, now's the time. God bless.
So, the next numbered card of the main promotion died down, where Henry Cejudo and Aljamain Sterling met in the main event. Aljo won a very close and equal fight, and thus he defends his belt, and becomes the first who was able to defend him 3 times in the bantamweight division, and should soon announce his fight against Sean O'Malley. Hello fighters, with you channel MMA predictions. In this video, I will give a prediction for a potential fight between Aljamain Sterling and Sugar Sean O'Malley. But before starting this video, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and like it so that as many fans as possible can see this episode. To be honest, I'm still shocked. Aljamain Sterling is the dominant bantamweight champion with 3 title defenses. When he first fought against Peter, who could have imagined this character on the throne of the division? But a few years later, unexpectedly for everyone, Aljo progressed and began to defeat opponent after opponent. First, he defended his title in the second fight against Yan. He won, well, by a very controversial decision of the judges. Then he was waiting for the retired veteran TJ Dillashaw, whom he was able to defeat in 2 rounds and defended the title of champion for the second time. And now he again had the opportunity to meet another legend from retirement under the name of Henry Cejudo. On the eve of the fight, a lot of things were said. Cejudo claimed that he would eat him and not even choke. But in the end, Sterling again won by a controversial decision of the judges and defended the title of champion for the 3rd time after Aljo's future rival Sean O'Malley entered the octagon, with whom Aljamain had a verbal conflict. Sterling claimed that Sugar was offered a fight a year ago, but he refused, and Merab generally smelled. He grabbed Sean's fashionable jacket, put it on, and began to show off in it all over the octagon. In general, the end of the tournament turned out to be really bright, and once it became clear who would fight with whom further, Sterling will naturally defend his belt against O'Malley, and Merab, Aljo's friend, will fight Henry Cejudo, who has shown a desire to stay in this game and play longer. Now only is at the peak of his hype. Before the fight against Petr Yan, he defeated not particularly mature fighters, Almeida, Weiland. These are long forgotten down pilots who have nothing to do with the top. And now, after a couple of such victories, he is given the first number of the rating Petr Yan, with whom they had a very close fight. There were moments for one and the second where, as a result, by a split decision of the judges, the victory was given Sugar, and now he becomes the main contender for the title fight. And right now, let's start analyzing this fight. I think it will be interesting for you to know, will Sean be able to defend himself against Funkmaster takedowns and become a bantamweight champion? Percussive style. And the first in line is the recent triumphant Aljamain Sterling. Since the fight against Petr Yan, Aljo has made great progress in this regard. Yes, his fighting style is the most uncomfortable in all UFC. Maybe what he does is not dangerous and is unlikely to lead to a knockout. But all these pokes, light throwing blows, are considered in the eyes of the judges, and therefore, for the most part, in close fights, the victory is given to him. All these jabs, the front of the kick on the body, in general, Aljo breaks through everything that is possible. If only the referees of this fight appreciate such an action. As I said, the strength in his blows is simply not simple, but you can say this style, even better than the one that goes out in order to knock out. When you work for glasses, not only the stance develops, but also endurance, which also became better for Aljo. but we will talk about this a little later. Now let's move on to the striking skills Sugar, and here it is a little more interesting. And as I think in this aspect the main factor will be the anthropometry of the athletes. Aljo did not have opponents who would surpass him in height, arm span. O'Malley is one of those fighters who, a priori, can keep a Funkmaster at a distance and break him with his creative and most importantly, strong blows. Yes, O'Malley has a cast iron blow, and here the phrase appearance is deceptive is just the same. It looks like an ordinary guy. It is difficult to call him a fighter at first glance, but it turns out that he can knock you out. Sean knocked out quite a few fighters. He was even able to shake Petr Yan, who has a holder at the level, so yes, if he finds his moment in the fight against Sterling, everything can end sadly for the champion. Because he can fall, we saw it. As a favorite, I will choose Sean, and I have already described above why. Anthropometry, striking force, creativity of blows, everything is on the side of Sugar. Playing from below. Let's move on to the aspect because of which this fight can be one-sided. But first things first. This time we will start with Sean, who is not to say that he is a wrestler to the core, but he has never really met with wrestlers. His company led him along an absolutely easy path. He even took the first line of the bantamweight weight thanks to the victory over the drummer. And the fight against Aljo will be a real test for O'Malley. Of course, he often performs in grappling matches where he has victories, I can say, over top jitsu fighters. But grappling and MMA are two different categories of fights. If O'Malley could, of course he would translate, but due to the fact that he could not adapt his ground to another sport, he decided to fight on his hands. But Aljo was able to, and right now, we will talk about him. As for the Jamaican, lately he, as well as in the rack, has grown a lot in this regard. At first he held a fighter for several rounds, which was not realistic to fight before the fight with him. But I'm talking about Petr Yan. Then he easily translated and destroyed TJ Dillashaw. There is no need to talk about competition. Everything was too easy, and now an Olympic wrestling champion has been added to his piggy bank. He was able to translate him as many as 4 times. This says a lot. Henry, before this fight, no one even brought such competition as Aljo. Even the Mighty Mouse could not translate the American, but Aljo was able to do it. And now, without question, you can call the toughest wrestler in the entire division. While there is no fighter in the bantamweight division who could resist the fight of the Jamaican, there was of course one Russian, but apparently he will no longer be able to show his potential. And of course, Aljamain will undoubtedly be considered the favorite in this aspect, who, if he wants, will skating on Sugar. Cardio spirit. Let's move on to endurance, and even here he was able to surpass himself. As we know before, at the end of the fight he often slowed down and could not continue the fight at his usual pace. But in the fight against Cejudo, the champion kept a high pace throughout the fight and did not even think to give back. As for O'Malley's stamina, he very rarely comes to a decision in a 3-round fight. What can we say about a 5-round fight? It seems to me that he will not withstand such a pace and will breathe in the 3rd round, and the poet will again have Aljamain Sterling as my favorite. In terms of spirit, I will also choose him. He tries to surpass his former self every time. Something improves, something does, and he obviously will not stop there. Forecast. I think in this fight the champion will take the victory without a chance. His fight will become the determining factor. He will translate and O'Malley will not be able to do anything about it. Even Petr Yan translated him, so what can we talk about here at all? The future of fighters. After the victory, Sterling, as he said, will rise to a higher category and try to take the belt there, and O'Malley will remain such a kind of top 10 fighter who will mainly take big fights.